tight ends with the top rest of season schedule for you. Top of the list is the Cleveland Browns, and David Njoku's come on his last 3 games, been a top 6 tight end in those last 3, really looking solid. But now he loses Deshaun Watson. We'll see, though. He played well with P.J. Walker. He was the starter. It does sound like they're going to try out DTR, though. If that becomes the rest of season outlook, then this is going to be brutal for David Njoku. But should he get this role? This schedule is what you dream of. Pittsburgh this week, not good, 29th. But after that, Denver, second most points. Rams, third most points. Jacksonville, right in the middle of the pack. Chicago, after that, seventh most points. Houston, fifth most points. The Jets, 11th most points. Great against wide receivers, really bad against tight ends. After this 1 week against Pittsburgh this week, everything is wheels up for David Njoku. So hopefully they can get some QB stability. Probably hoping for P.J. Walker there over DTR, who is getting the start this week. We'll see how he does. But Njoku could really eat with that schedule. Titans, Chigo Okonkwo, again, probably on your waiver wire. Not a guy that's owned, only 26% rostered right now. Jacksonville, Carolina, these next 2 weeks, not great. Indy, middle of the road. Good defense to feast upon, giving up the second most points per game total. So a lot of touchdowns getting scored there. And then when you get to week 14, Miami, 9th most points. Houston, 5th most points. Seattle, 16th most points. And then Houston again, 5th most points. So Chigo Okonkwo, I know he hasn't done a ton, but he's actually showed some glimpses here with Will Levis. Maybe worth a waiver wire stash here to see how he picks up his game with his soft schedule in those final 4 weeks especially. But, man, you got to highlight this one. My number 1 tight end to target right now. And it's no surprise. He's not going to come cheap. That's TJ Hawkinson. My God, this schedule. Denver this week, 2nd most points. Chicago, 7th most points. Gets his bye. Then you got the Raiders, 20th. Cincinnati, the most points allowed. Detroit, 4th most points allowed. That's week 15 and 16. Your fantasy playoffs there. And then Green Bay, 22nd. You could not ask for a better smash spot for TJ Hawkinson, who's gone, 11 and 12 catches in his 2 games with Josh Dobbs, who loves to religiously pepper the tight end position. In love with TJ Hawkinson. He's the type of guy no, you shouldn't move Tyreek Hill for TJ Hawkinson. But if you could move Tyreek Hill for TJ Hawkinson and, I'm trying to think of a good lower end wide receiver one here. Maybe Brandon Ayuk with that third easiest schedule. I know it seems like an absurd deal. Oh no, I'd never give up Tyreek for that. But you could probably even sneak something else in there. Ayuk, TJ Hawkinson, and one other RB2, Jerome Ford, right? That's how much people value Tyreek Hill, and deservedly so. He's number 3 on my rest of season big boy. I get it. But TJ Hawkinson is that type of piece that could get you a 25-point weekly edge at tight end, particularly with his rest of season schedule. The Raiders are the 4th. Michael Mayer maybe off the waiver wire is worth a look. But after them, if you're not going to go after Hawkinson, what about Marky Andrews? Especially, again, if you're in win now mode. Cincy this week, Thursday Night Football, go get him now. 1st most points allowed to tight ends. Then he gets the Chargers right after that, 6th most points. Bye week for Mark Andrews. Rams, 3rd most points right off that. 3 top 5 matchups for Mark Andrews. Fantasy playoffs not quite as friendly. Jacksonville, 19th. San Fran, 26th. A really tough spot there in week 16, your semifinals. But if you get through there, Miami, 9th most points allowed. So Mark Andrews, 4 of his last 6 matchups here in the top 10 for tight ends. He should have a smashing success here. And just worth noting too with Hawkinson, again, none of those matchups are in the red zone. They're all 4 of the 6 are in the green. None of them sneak into the red. So really, really good spot there for TJ Hawkinson. Rounding out the list of best schedule are the Saints, then the Lions, Sammy Laporta, Chicago 7th, Green Bay, New Orleans, then Chicago, Denver, Minnesota, all top 10 matchups in weeks 14, 15, 16. Dallas in week 17, they're actually most vulnerable against the tight end compared to how good they are at other positions. So Sam Laporta, who's coming off a little bit of a dud, maybe you can sneak him in for cheap right now. Falcons, Panthers, Bills, round out your top 10. Nice to see Kincaid with a juicy looking schedule down the stretch. Now, in terms of the hardest rest of season schedules for your tight ends, the Rams, Tyler Higbee, who cares? Nobody really cares that Tyler Higbee has the worst playoff schedule. You're not playing him. But Evan Ingram, 2nd hardest schedule, has not scored a touchdown yet. The longest streak right now in terms of most targets without a touchdown there is Evan Ingram. They get Tennessee, 28th, Houston, 5th, Cincy 1st. So 2 really nice matchups in weeks 12 and 13. And then after that, it's all red. Cleveland, 32nd. They're just a tight end eraser right there, Cleveland. Baltimore, 31st, also deleting tight ends in week 15. Tampa Bay, middle of the road at 14, and then Carolina, 30th against tight ends. So brutal spot for him. Goddard, if he comes back, the Eagles get the third hardest schedule for tight ends. But right now, who knows what he's going to be, if he's even going to make it back. Not worth holding on to, in my opinion, given this brutal schedule for them. Seahawks have the fourth hardest. No one cares about Noah Fant. And then the Bengals, no one really cares about them as well. So it's really just emphasizing the fact that the Jags have the hardest schedule right now. But you also do want to note in your fantasy playoffs, in terms of actually relevant players, Dalton Schultz has the hardest single schedule. Gets the Titans, who have been a much more wide receiver funnel here to the position. So that's a bottom matchup for Dalton Schultz. The rest of his season, he only has one green light matchup as well. So worst fantasy playoff schedule, the mediocre, middle of the road at best matchups, even in the rest of the season. So Dalton Schultz actually makes sense as a sell high, especially when all the receivers are healthy. Who knows how the targets are going to get distributed there. You also have the Bengals, Jags, Evan Ingram again, and then Cole Kmet actually has the fourth hardest schedule among tight ends. He's been really booming, so maybe he's a toss into a trade type of piece. Somebody told me earlier today that they got, I think it was the Duck from Roto Street. He traded Kmet for Dak. So again, like I'm like, yeah, it's going to be impossible to buy Dak after this 4-game hot stretch. He moved. It was an owner who had a great number one quarterback, so you know that's how these type of deals happen. But Kmet for Dak, like these type of deals can happen. So you've got to go try him out. He's certainly a sell at this point with the fourth hardest tight end schedule, but the easiest schedules for your tight ends here. Arizona, Mr. Trey McBride. He gets San Fran, brutal matchup to kick off his fantasy playoffs, week 15. After that, the two best matchups you could possibly ask for in adjusted points allowed. Chicago, the most adjusted points allowed. Philly, the second most adjusted points allowed to tight ends. So that gives Trey McBride, who's had 25.1, 21.1 points in two of his last three, getting absolutely peppered, leading the team in targets in two of those 3 games. He's been a monster, and he's behind only Travis Kelce in yards per route run right now. Just an elite player. Maybe you can sneak in the fact that, yeah, Zach Ertz, he's going to come back. There's no way he's going to keep doing this. So, yeah, let me have Trey McBride for cheap, bro. I know that's probably not going to work out, but you got to just pay what you can. If you're looking at, especially a bye week right now, and you have week 16 and 17, and you need a tight end, nobody is going to be better than Trey McBride. He's top 6 rest of season for me in my rest of season big board. I would go after him as hard as possible. Besides him, though, the Cowboys actually have the second easiest rest of season schedule. And rest season looks good, but the fantasy playoffs is the second easiest. That's where you really want to pepper Jake Ferguson, who's now becoming an 80% snap player, running nearly all the routes here. It is no longer a committee that was kind of capping his ceiling. So big fan of Jake Ferguson down your stretch runs. And last but not least, you got the Broncos looking good. Yeah, that is least, but the Bills actually have the 5th best schedule among tight ends in your fantasy playoffs as well. So that's a team to definitely target. So the Bills, I'm pulling it up right now. Dallas, not a great match, but then the Chargers, New England, both top 6 in terms of points allowed. So Dalton Kincaid on this epic stretch run right now should continue into your fantasy playoffs. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.